an actor comes into the agency looking to hire an agent to work for them. That is something I think a lot of actors don't think of.
They don't think of themselves as the house. Like, they're the house, and agencies are real estate agencies. You are the product. Do you have an idea of the product that you're selling? You're also a human with a soul. And
I do, when I conduct meetings, I will say, I am here to sell you, and I need to know how to sell you. That's why I have to get to know you.
Hey there, welcome back to the DNA Podcast, episode 11. Here we are with Julia Schneider. She is an agent at Ambition Talent. Julia is the first person we've had on the podcast who isn't an actor, which is very exciting to me. Really want to start bringing on more agents, casting directors. Julia is the first agent, and every actor wants insights from agents, especially actors who are looking to get agents. And what I was really hoping this conversation would be, I should state, Julia is my agent. She is the best, highly, highly intelligent. She also was an actor for a really long time and quite a successful one. So she comes at it from this multifaceted understanding of the industry. I wanted to have a conversation where we're pulling sort of the same threads, following the same sort of journey that this podcast has been so far, which is I didn't want to just ask the questions, how do you get an agent? What do you recommend? What are agents looking for? These questions do get asked, but the conversation pulls the thread of who Julia is, how she became who she has become in the industry, how she has grown, and the challenges that she has faced through that provides a tremendous amount of insight and understanding of how the industry works and how the symbiotic relationship between talent and representation works. And Julia brings a tremendous amount of kindness and care and intelligence, and when she needs to, ruthlessness to her work as an agent. So to be able to chat with her in this way has been a boon to me in a way that's hard to quantify. And she's been my agent for years. Can only imagine how valuable it's going to be to you guys. So I'm going to stop, talking to her and just start the show where you can hear us talk to her. Okay. All right. Appreciate you very much. Thanks for being here. Let's get into it. So first off, I want to say thank you for being here. And I also, it's funny because you and I have known each other from a long time ago. Like, I just moved to Toronto and started training when I met you. Yeah, I was a baby. I was like, I think 21, 22.
Okay.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I was like, oh, this woman is one of the cool kids, and I'm not one of the cool kids. I was like, you were very intimidating to me. One, because you were so good, and two, because your resume was so much better than mine was at the time. Mine was completely non-existent, and so from like the moment I met you, I've admired you. And then over the years, I've seen you like go through a successful career and transition into being an agent. And now you are my agent, which I feel incredibly grateful for. And I just want to start by saying how much I appreciate you and how much I root for you all the time. And I'm grateful that you're a part of my team. And I'm grateful that actors in the city have you as a part of theirs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is so kind.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's nice. And one of the, so what I find so cool about you, and one of the reasons that kind of really drew me to you as an actor, in the hopes that you would sign me, and you did, was that you do come from acting. Like, you have firsthand understanding of the beautiful and terrible profession that we have engaged in. And so I'm curious, like, what brought you to agenting from acting, and how did you come to that, and how was the transition? Well, you don't have to have a concise answer to that. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, no, it's a very strange thing for me because I was acting for about 12 years in Toronto, so I knew everybody in town. I was doing all of the things that you were doing as an actor, and I grew up with a lot of Toronto actors that are now, reputable, working across borders. And then I think at that point, when I was feeling a shift with my relationship to acting, at one point I loved it. I wanted to spend all my time doing it. And then I remember specifically one day I got a call from my agent, and I let the call go to voicemail.
I'm sure he loved that.
Oh, yeah, he loved it. I realized at that point, why didn't I pick up that phone call? Because I knew I was going to get an audition, because I knew I was going to have to cancel my plans that night, because I knew I was going to have to work on an audition for the next 24 hours and dedicate my life to that role. And I didn't want to do it. And it was that moment I went, oh, my relationship has changed. Mm-hmm. What is that about? So I ended up looking into that feeling of, do I really want to do this? I clearly don't, because I didn't want to take the call. Right. And it was a really hard moment for me, because it was all that I ever knew. And I had been working at it so hard, and it wasn't really hitting for me. I would work occasionally, get a couple jobs a year, great, could sustain myself, but it wasn't the career that I had envisioned for myself, at least at that point, after 12 years of really working hard at it. Right. Sure, I could have not given up. Who knows where it would have taken me. But at that point, I knew that I had goals for myself to be able to pay my phone bills consistently. Yeah. So I had to really explore that feeling and dig deep. What was I going to do next? Yeah. Because I had spent so much of my time, and my identity was completely wrapped up in acting. Yeah. So it was a very difficult decision, and it took me about a year to a year and a half to finally make the decision to walk into my agent's office and say, I'm quitting the biz, and I will be your greatest competition. Right. So when you, I want to flag that because I want to ask you some questions about that. Mm-hmm. But when you, it's interesting. I don't want to say quit, because it's like, it makes me think of like if you go through a 3-year relationship or a 10-year relationship, like a romantic relationship, and it ends, it's like it's easy to say that that's like you quit or it failed, as opposed to being like, we had a good run, like this was a successful run, and now it's time to walk down a different path. And did you know when you were making that the acting part of your journey was over, that you were like, now I'm going to be an agent? Was that clear to you? Okay, so you didn't know that you were going to be competition? No, it took me a year and a half to realize. And what I did after that phone call, I had to explore my options. Right. And I decided that perhaps maybe doing something within the industry creatively, but on a different side of the lens, being on behind the camera, might be something of interest to me. So I sought out jobs as a casting assistant. So I worked in the casting office, and I figured out how they ran. And then I got a job at a modeling agency as an assistant booker, and I was just in-house taking phone calls, calling out auditions, mm-hmm. Doing time changes, sending out emails, sending out appointments, running the front of the house of this modeling agency for about a year and a half. And that's kind of when I started to realize that, oh, this is actually a really interesting job. I'm still creative, and I'm working with creative people, mm-hmm. but it was a modeling industry, so it was a little bit different. Yep. And it wasn't until I got a phone call from the founder of Ambition. Right. David Ritchie. Well, what? And he said, well, you like actors and you're working with models, like leave the modeling agency world and come work with actors. Sounds exactly like Dave. Exactly. Those were his words. Yeah. And then at that point I went, you're right. I know what I can do on an agency side of things. I can at least do admin work. Mm-hmm. I'll come and assist you at Ambition. So at that time, I was still acting. I hadn't walked into my agent's office to say, I'm leaving. Right. But my relationship had changed, and I was much more interested on the business side of things. And about when I walked into David's office, I said, look, I'm going to still audition. Can I assist? And he said, okay, sure, you can do it. But I guarantee you in a year, you're going to want to become an agent, and you're going to quit acting. And I'm like, whatever, maybe, we'll see. Right. And he was right. To about a year, I walked into my agent's office and I quit acting. So what drew you, like what was he right about? What drew you as a former actor to agenting? Like what hooked you? I think it was the sense of control.
Nice. Yes.
Because that's not what you have as an actor. You don't have a huge sense of control.
No, the idea of the sense of control can actually be really antithetical to the entire experience.
Yeah.
Like,
so I was able to work with creatives, still be in the creative industry, but not have the pressures of having to show up every day and like feeling like I was failing as an actor,
right.
and just supporting actors instead and championing them and believing them. And I felt better in that position than, you know, being my own champion and trying to be my own cheerleader. I can be a cheerleader for, say, 20 people rather than just for myself.
Right.
And it just felt right. It felt right. And I had an understanding of the industry, obviously becoming an agent from being an actor. I knew all the casting directors because they were the ones that cast me in projects when I was a kid. And
did you start as like a teenager?
Yeah, I started when I was 13.
Whoa, okay, wow.
Yeah. So I was very, very young and impressionable.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so I started at that age, and then by the time I was in my early or mid 20s at that point when I made the decision to become an agent. And then during that year, I knew a lot of actors, you know, because I grew up in the industry.
Yeah, of course.
I'd go to industry events or parties or just friends of friends, and, you know, I would talk to them, oh yeah, I work at this agency, and then they would be inclined to be like, oh, let me take a meeting. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. So they come in, and the first year as an assistant, I signed a couple people, though I wasn't allowed to like legally represent them.
Right.
They were under the umbrella of Ambition.
Right.
And so eventually when I did graduate to become a full-time agent, those clients were absorbed to me. And so I had a little bit of a roster in my first year already.
That's such a unique leg up too, because you would have been so connected to talent who were like good. Like so many agents when they're starting out don't have that luxury. They're trying to find diamonds in the rough and cultivate them, and so to be able to jump in with a few who you knew could really go to bat.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And it was always in my forefront of my mind, because I would see actors that I grew up with or that I would take class with, and I would always think, oh, like, who would I want to represent? And I had this like dream roster list of people that I grew up with that I want to rep, and you know, I've been able to manage actually to rep some of them, which is wild.
That's awesome.
Super wild.
It's so cool. Just as somebody who's a fan of yours, seeing your energy, like from talking about your actor days and deciding, like in that phone call that you decided to put to voicemail, and then hearing you talk about actors and talk about agenting, and just seeing like, oh man, that feels so right for you in the way that like it settles in your body. That's really wonderful that you found that, and found it relatively like early too. Like
I don't know if it was early enough, to be honest. I kind of wish it was. I wish I had quit a little earlier.
You think?
I think so.
Say more. Why? By the way, I don't know is always a perfectly acceptable answer on this podcast.
I know.
Yeah.
I just haven't thought about it before. I would have liked to remove myself from the toxic environment that I find the industry to be.
Sure. And do you feel that you get to have a greater level of control and distance from that, from the position of representation?
No.
Okay, interesting, cool.
It's still toxic.
Sure, yeah.
And it still doesn't make any sense, and you know, we know nothing. None of us know anything. It's always, you know, up to the hands of the film gods, essentially.
There is some element of like just unmeasurable, when is the luck gonna hit?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that happens with agents too, you know? And so I find that, yes, there is a little bit of a distance from it. I understand it a lot better as a whole, now that I've been on the business side for so long.
Sure.
But yeah.
Yeah, I found my transition, well, not a transition, but like I produce, it's definitely not like where my passion lies, but learning the nuts and bolts really of how the sausage gets made, at least allowed me to sometimes drive the world's shittiest road without my insecurities holding the wheel. Like at least I like was able to lead with, am generally able to lead now more with my rational, logical self, you know, driving the bus, which I think a lot of actors don't have that.
Oh, it's such a good feeling.
Yeah, it's nice. It's certainly more empowering,
Yes.
like I find.
Yeah.
I'm curious because, so around the time that you were agenting, like starting to agent, I was starting to coach. And I find it really fascinating because I kind of tripped into that and happened to have a couple of superpowers that made me very good at it in a niche way that later I would have to unpack, because that caused me to then spend about a decade of my life feeling like I had all the answers, when in actuality I only had all the answers in a very tiny sliver of my existence. And then I discovered therapy and was like, oh man, I got some learning to do. And I'm curious, like for me, it was the ability to take complex story and distill it down into really, really clear things that allowed actors to just hook into stuff, and then basically copy paste audition technique at that time. And that helped me get ahead because it meant that I was able to help actors book right away, which was both good and challenging in my life, and led to good things and also challenges. And I'm curious if you had anything when you started agenting where you were just like, oh, I'm in a world that's very new to me here, and I'm really good at this like these parts of it. I don't know if that's something that you felt.
Yeah, I think I felt really good about picking talent, because I remember sitting in acting class for days on end, hours and hours, watching actors,
Right.
learning techniques of camera, like the camera techniques.
Right.
And I think when it came to vetting actors and anyone that was applying to the agency, I could tell right away who had the potential to do something great,
Right.
or who might not have the thing.
Yeah.
That it quality.
It's a really fascinating, because I was chatting when we had Amalia on this.
Yeah.
By the way, she's in Siberia right now, and so she and I had a Zoom call this morning. We just had coffee.
Amazing.
It's like 8 p.m. her time, 8 a.m. my time, and she says hi and sends her love.
Hi,
she was so
Amalia.
excited. Yeah.
Hi, Amalia.
Yeah.
I miss you.
Yeah, she friggin' loves you, and she and I were talking about, like, she asked me the question, do I think that, like, there is an it factor to actors, and it is really interesting because I think there are so many things that an actor can learn. Like, I do believe it's a thing that can be cultivated.
Absolutely.
But some people just have it.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're born with it.
Yeah, it's
100%.
wild. Yeah, and it's really rare.
Yes.
Like talent in general is one of the rarest resources on the planet of any kind. But that kind of talent is like, in a world of gold, it's diamonds.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. So being able to spot that must have been.
I'm not always right.
Sure.
Not always right.
Yeah.
But I think, my intuition, my instincts, I have a pretty good idea of where someone's career could go. Obviously, a lot of things have to come into play with that.
Right.
But yeah, when vetting talent, I think I've got a very good eye for it.
Great.
And I attribute that to my acting career.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I think also just the work that I did for that career.
Right.
As well, may I not have a large resume, but I worked really hard at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were very good. I was
thanks.
only in a couple of classes with you, and you were very, very good.
I didn't feel it. I did not feel it at the time. I still don't think I was, but
It's funny. I was talking to a client about this yesterday, and I don't know if telling my agent this is the smartest idea, but, like, honestly, I don't know if up until, like, this past year I would tell you that I believed that I'm actually any good at acting. It's a weird thing. I'm 39. Wow. I've been doing this for 20 years.
oh my God.
Like, more than 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I could look at my IMDb and be like, well, I mean, quantifiably, I obviously am capable of doing it. And there's something about, like, self-belief. I don't know, like, actors arrive at it at different times, and then sometimes too, it's like it can just vanish and then come back, and it's a strange thing. And I think one of the things that makes great actors, not that I'm looping myself into the great actor category, internet, don't come at me, is their ability to keep doing the job regardless of how they feel about themselves. Because I think if you're tying your production and your craft to feeling good about being a good actor, it's like you are.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
That is one of the key things I notice with representing performers, is that they tie their identity in their job and how many times they're on set and their worth. And you can't live like that.
No, because you can put up, like, this happened to me a couple of years ago, put up like a year of what I think were really good auditions, didn't book a single thing and then booked Murdoch and then had a really good year. But it's like, who knows? Like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
It's wild.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
None of us know anything.
Yeah. I'm curious, like this is obviously an obvious question that I'm sure you knew was coming, but are there things that you look for when talent is approaching you? This is one of the ones that obviously people, when I put out onto the internet, like I'm going to be chatting with you, they were like, what are agents looking for in actors? And I'm like, well, of course people are going to ask that. Is there some quantifiable thing? Like you mentioned that you had, that was one of your superpowers early. Are there things that you look for from talent that stick out?
Well, it's funny you say that because I feel like I know it when I see it, but I don't know if I can properly describe exactly what it is.
I would imagine it's different for everybody.
It is different for everyone.
Right.
I think right off the bat, having a polished package, really great headshots, some classwork of some sort to show me that you're currently enrolled and learning the craft is a big thing for me. To know that you're serious about it even before you were looking for an agent, I think that's probably number one.
Okay.
I'll say that. Number one. You don't even have to have great headshots. Just make sure you're in class.
Sure. Yeah.
And that you're working towards becoming a better actor. And I think asking, if you get a meeting, asking really poignant and interesting questions, and trying to learn about the industry.
Right.
Just having an interest in this business and knowing that it is a business.
Yeah.
It's not just a fun thing to do because you want to do it, because you saw somebody on Netflix one morning. You're like, hey, I could do that. Like, taking it seriously, I think is a quality I look for.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I find whenever I have clients who are looking for rep, like I always have said that like having a great referral really helps, like having somebody say, hey, I think you should take a look at this person. If they fit on your roster, like it's one of those things where like there are times where I'll send you people and I know, because I've looked at the IMDb, that it's probably not going to be a fit because you have somebody on the roster that is that person's type. And then after that, I'm always like having an understanding of what your goals are so that you can speak to them, because so many actors that I know go into agency meetings and when asked like, well, where do you see yourself in, a few years? It's just like, I just want to be working. And I'm just like, don't go in with vague answers like that, because so does everybody. Of course you do. It pays a lot of money and everybody brings you lattes. Like it's a phenomenal job. And like, do you have an understanding of how people advance through the industry? Do you have an understanding of the types of roles that you want to be booking on things? Do you have an understanding of what's shooting in town? These things, and I could be wrong, so I'm fascinated to chat with you about it. I'm like trying to find out if I'm giving bad advice to my clients. Yeah. But the idea that having agency around how you fit in the industry and how the industry works going into an agency meeting has got to be a good thing.
Absolutely, 100%. I think the more you know, the better. Or even if you don't know a lot, just to ask the right questions.
Right.
Because I want to be able to help the performer any way I possibly can. An actor comes into the agency looking to hire an agent to work for them.
Yeah.
That is something I think a lot of actors don't think of.
They don't think of themselves as the house. Like they're the house, and agencies are real estate agencies to a degree. Like it's not quite that simple, but like
if you want to break it down.
Yeah, but the product is like, you are the product. Do you have an idea of the product that you're selling? You're also a human with a soul and
absolutely.
And
but also I do, when I conduct meetings, I will say I am here to sell you, and I need to know how to sell you. That's why I have to get to know you.
Do you find that that's becoming more important in like, I feel like the industry is becoming increasingly brand focused. Like, what is your brand? What do you represent? Is that something that you feel actors need to be more aware of, or is it not really worth getting up about?
I don't think it's necessarily a brand. I don't think everybody needs to have an Instagram page and selling themselves. I don't think it's about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a room and a space for that, for those types of people. But I think when it comes to working actors and people in film and television, I think it's better to have a sense of self and understanding of who you are, more so than trying to sell yourself to get people to like you. I think they're vastly different. Yeah, if that makes
a lot of sense. So, yeah, it being, I think my understanding of what you're saying is a lot of actors get sidelined trying to turn themselves into what they think the industry is going to want of them, rather than being like, this is who I am, let's go.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't want to see a version of them. I want to see them. I think, if that makes any sense.
That makes so much sense. So I'd love to chat a little bit more about, because COVID changed everything. And it's been fascinating for me as a coach, because I had to change the way, like I used to prepare people to go into the room. Like it was like 90% of auditions were that. It was about creating a literal product that they could go in and represent under pressure in an hour. And now the process is completely different in that it's about discovery of the take, and then when you have it, it's done. Like it's totally changed in so many ways. It's gotten easier, and in so many ways it's gotten harder. I'm curious how all of that affected the agency world, because I'm sure you're inundated with self-tapes and actors being like, did you watch my tape?
Oh, yeah. But it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because I love being able to watch a tape.
Right.
I think that's the blessing, being able to watch your performers show what they're going to show in the room. Is not something that we ever had access to for years. And then once we started watching the tapes, I got to see the work.
Right.
Some of it was great, and then some of it needed to be tweaked. And so then I got the ability to say, hey, call the client, tell them my notes, talk about it, see why they made those choices, and then decide whether or not they wanted to retape or not. And then potentially creating a stronger tape in the end.
Right.
But the curse is, yes, we are now ultimately the people that are the ones to provide feedback for everything. Whereas the actor can't go into the room, can't meet the casting director, can't feel the vibe in the room. The director may or may not be there, producer might be there. You might get a redirect in the room, whereas now you do a tape, you don't get a redirect. You have one take, and they decide in that moment whether or not you're either getting a callback or you're not even in the mix.
Right.
So for me, I get a lot more phone calls and a lot more interest of, hey, did you watch it? What are your thoughts? Like, I didn't get any feedback. And I will try to provide feedback. I think that's my favorite part of the job, is the acting part, because that's what I grew up loving about the job. So yeah, as an agent, I really like to watch the tapes and see what they are putting forward. So yeah, it's great for me. Not so great, I think, for the actor at this point, because now you have to set up the lighting, get a reader, make sure the sound is great, and, choose your takes, edit it.
Yeah.
It's so much work.
Yeah, the burden of cost and the burden of production.
So much more time is being put into it.
Yeah.
And at this point, we send those tapes, and they probably watch maybe 30 seconds to a minute of everyone's tape.
Yeah.
But with that also, because no one's going in the room, they're willing to see more tapes. So the amount of tapes that are being called out are in the thousands for one role, rather than a couple hundred, or maybe 20 if you're going in the room.
Yeah, like back in the day.
There are casting directors that specifically said, I've got 20 spots, I'll see 20 people for this, and that's it.
Yep.
Now, 2,000, sure, no problem. I've got time. I'll see 2,000 people for this one role.
It's wild. It's something that I find myself as an actor profoundly grateful that I started around the time. Well, no, I started after you did, because you started as a teenager. But I started in the 2005, 2006 era, and by the time it switched to almost entirely self-tapes, I have all these relationships with, I was getting opportunities while it was just, I have 20 people to bring into the room. I'm so grateful that was something that I had cultivated for the most part. I mean, there's still some casting directors that I wouldn't have been one of those people, but lots of them were. And I'm so grateful I had that going into self-tapes, because generally I tape and I'm like, they're probably watching at least 30 seconds of my tape. And it's also fascinating because it's changed the way I coach. Knowing that those numbers are so high, hooking people within the first 3 to 5 seconds of a tape
so important
is because they're through no fault of their own. And this is something that like a lot of actors will ask me, and sometimes they'll feel pretty like, I think, beaten by it or cynical about the industry in this way, that they'll say like, I don't even know if my tape is being watched or if it's being turned off after 10 seconds, or if the casting directors are even paying attention. And I'm like, you guys have no idea how much casting directors care. Like, they're so invested in finding the right person for the role because they are always auditioning for their jobs too, right? Like, there's options, and they're bidding for jobs, and they need to prove that they can put the best talent forward. Everybody in this industry is constantly trying to prove themselves, up to and including the number ones on like, you know, the biggest movies, because you're only relevant until you're not.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I try to encourage actors to do is to like understand that the agent wants to care. Not agent. The casting director wants to care. Agents want to care too. But they're burned out on tapes. Nobody can watch 1,000 of anything without glazing over. So we have to do things that help them. I often think of it like when you're reading a novel, you'll subconsciously just like start zoning out, and really good writers will just put a sentence in the middle of every few pages that instead of saying, I don't want to do that anymore, they'll say anymore, comma, I don't want to do that, so that the reader goes back and re-engages. And so I'm consciously trying to get actors at the beginning of their takes to be like, give them something that's making their brains re-engage. It's just something that's a little different because they want to, they just can't. Because I can't watch 100 TikToks without being like, my brain is destroyed. It's fascinating. Do you find actors are having a harder time having personal connection with casting compared to like when I was a kid? It's harder to get that personal impression.
They've never met any of them, which is not something that I had ever had an issue with growing up, because I knew everybody by face.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I know this person, I know that person. And they're like, no, I've never met them before. We had our Christmas party. Yeah. And we had a couple casting directors there, and I had a couple actors, and I was like, oh, you should go meet them. They're here. Oh, I don't know what they look like. And I was like, oh my goodness, you need to meet them in person. So then I make the introduction, but it's just so funny because they have no idea. And then it also makes them happier at the end. They're like, oh, they're not so scary after all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for so many actors, casting directors are a dark room that they think are filled with sharp objects. And the reality is you turn on the light and it's just like good people who are trying to provide opportunities.
Yeah, or you know, that they're the villain of the story. They're like, oh, they're out to get me. You know, they don't want me. They don't want to hire me. And I'm like, no, that's the opposite. Yeah. They want you to get the job. Yeah. Makes their job easier.
100%. When you're signing new talent in the current era, because this is something that I've run into on set coaching. In-person auditions were the crucible, in my opinion, that got actors ready for set. When the stakes are much higher, when everything's costing, you know, $1,000 to $3,000 a minute, when, you know, especially if you're an actor role or principal, you are going in to provide a service and to not be a problem for anybody, and then go out. And we ran into this on Burbs a couple of times with actors who the only experience they had ever had were tapes, and they didn't get any even Zoom callbacks. They were just hired.
Yeah, that's happening now.
And then getting to set, and their nervous systems are completely unprepared for it and shutting down through no fault of their own. Is that something that you're trying to troubleshoot with clients, or is that something that you've thought about that like you're trying to find solutions for?
It's funny, I've never thought about it.
No, hey, that's great. Yeah, it's like I'm only bringing it up because it's a problem that I'm trying to like get ahead of with people.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had that experience where I've had a client go on set and, you know, clammed up, let's say. Right. So I'm thankful for that. But I would imagine it would be happening a lot more than not. Right. And I guess from a producer's perspective or a director's perspective, they're probably having to deal with that. I don't know why they don't do in-person callbacks. I mean, sometimes they do. Even chemistry reads sometimes are done on Zoom. Yeah. Which is like mind-blowing.
There's nothing more antithetical to chemistry than two screens.
Oh yeah. It's wild. So no, I haven't had that issue yet. But I'm sure I will. And I'll call you.
Yeah,
I'll be like, Doug,
sure.
help me.
Yeah, it's funny because it's been something now when I'm working with clients one-on-one, I'll like deliberately, we'll do developmental stuff and I'll be like, hey, this is not about product, it's about growth. And then I'll deliberately fold in sessions where I'll let them know, I'm like, listen, I'm gonna give this to you 16 hours before you come in. And we're gonna give you one shot and one shot only on it, just to start getting their nervous systems jacked up, because it's like, you get to set and it's terrifying.
Oh yeah.
Like you know.
Oh yeah.
This is real scary to be on set.
Yeah, and
like I still get butterflies.
And
I've been
that's
doing this for a long
after
time.
you have the job.
Yeah.
You're still terrified.
I know, and here's the thing too, like you couldn't get fired. Like that's a thing that happens. People get recast all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Or you don't make the edit.
Yes.
Which is really bad.
It's so heartbreaking.
So
it's only
sad.
happened to me a couple of times and it sucks.
Yes.
Yeah. Through no fault of your own. Yeah, sometimes. And sometimes you're just not very good. I don't know. Yeah, it's wild. That's fascinating. So you're now a full like you and David are full co-owners of Ambition.
Mm-hmm.
Did that take time to come, or I would imagine it wasn't like and be a partner.
Oh no.
But like did it take a while?
Yeah, I mean I've been an agent for this is my 16th year.
Wow.
So I think it was about my first 10. I had to prove myself.
Yeah.
Pull my weight, make some money for the company.
Yeah.
And I
Makes
think
sense.
it was so it was about that time. And I think just because him and I have wanted to grow the agency, we've never grown the agency. It's just notoriously been a boutique agency ever, but we've always had these grand ideas of being like a large, CAA, let's say.
It's funny because whenever anybody talks about Ambition to me, they're always like they're the most LA agency in Canada. Like
that was our business model.
It's such a good thing.
That was our business model, yeah. But in a world that it was boutique still, because we have a full service agency of writers, directors, actors, voice theater, commercials, but we don't have a lot of clients because we want to curate our clients, experience as an actor or a writer or director. We want to make sure that we're available to them, that we can act as managers, but also agents. And just have a personal relationship,
right?
Rather than just kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall and just being like, "Oh, you're actor number 3. Okay, good luck." We really take an approach where we care about the clients and also just where we would like them to go and pave, some sort of path for them.
Right.
But yeah, much more of an LA mentality than a Canadian approach. We don't just sit and wait.
Yeah, and I don't think, don't get me wrong, you guys are of the utmost professional, but one of the things that I love about you guys is that you're willing to ruffle feathers, which I think so many people aren't. Like it's a culture of, here in the land of Canada, it's a culture of acquiescence in so many ways, and I think in that world, being willing to just lean into sharp edges enough. It gives you such a leg up, and it's so valuable. And it was one of the things that drew me outside of personal relationship with you to Ambition in the first place.
It's good to know.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
And it's like, and anytime I hear anyone speaking about the agency, that's like the main thing that they bring up, and it's such a good thing.
Yeah, and I think David and I together, we play good cop, bad cop a lot of the time.
Yeah.
He loves to play bad cop.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love to play good cop. I also am a good bad cop, though.
Yes.
I can get nasty.
Totally.
But in a polite way, and
Yeah.
I think, I'm definitely not willing for anyone to walk over our performers of any sense.
Yeah.
So I'm very protective of them, and he is as well. And I think together we make a really good team.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.
I coach a lot of your actors, and one of the things that I find so wonderful about you guys is that like it's so clear how much you give a shit. Like if you or David, I think David's done this more than you have, but like I'll just get calls and he'll be like, "Hey, what did you think about this tape?" And he wants it broken down and
He wants it broken down because he didn't sit through thousands and thousands of hours of acting class.
That's very true. Yeah, exactly. You already have that skill set. Yeah.
I don't bother you.
Exactly, but you can if you need to. Okay. And it's so great to just like you guys are so hands-on. I've never had a client with you guys that's ever felt like you guys aren't like really actively involved, which is really wonderful, because I think that's a huge insecurity of actors. I think actors often feel like they're alone floating in an ocean, and I think anybody who's on your roster, I can't obviously speak for everybody, but I would imagine that they always know that you're a lighthouse that they can point themselves at, which is so valuable.
Well, yeah, I think that was what I was also trying to strive for when I decided to become an agent.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an agent that I didn't have.
Yeah.
My agents were great.
I was like waiting for it. Yeah.
They were great.
Yeah.
No, they were very good at their jobs.
Yeah.
But certain moments growing up, like, I didn't feel like I could call. I didn't feel like I could have like a conversation. I was scared of them, and I found that I wanted to make sure that I was a place for actors to come to me and to speak freely and to have, lay down their issues or their problems or any of their concerns, to make it a safe space for them, because that inherently, your agent should be one of the closest people in your life and should know everything about your life, really.
Yeah.
They should always be the second phone call to your family.
Yeah.
If you're booking a vacation
Yeah.
or got a dentist appointment, you have a major breakup or something in your life happens, they should know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to, I strive for that.
Well, you're doing it.
Well, thanks.
Like you're like absolutely doing it, and it's awesome hearing you talk about how important that relationship is and how intimate that relationship is, and I want to zero in on that concept of like you wanted to be a safe space for actors, and one of the things that I think you guys are so good at, and I think really great agents are good at, is like, and I'll talk to actors about this. They'll be like, well, I'm afraid of talking to my agent, and I'll then talk to them about like, okay, well, if your agent is a safe place, which I think you are, I think actors need to also understand that a safe space does not always mean a space free of discomfort. I'm like, you should also have an agent who's willing to and ready to disagree with you. And you have to be able to, like, in your relationship with your agent as an actor, go in and be like, I don't think you and I have ever had a situation where I've taped something, you haven't liked it, and I've been like, no, this is the thing.
Not yet.
Not yet. It might happen.
It might happen.
Yeah, for sure. And but I have gone to bat for clients from time to time with agents and been like, listen, you don't have to trust me. We can retape, and like, this hasn't happened with you guys, but it's happened with other agents. And these are the reasons why we made the choices, and this is why I think it's important. And then, and I think actors need to understand too that their agent, while they are a safe space, are also a place where they have to be willing to go to battle and to be able to concede, as well as be like, well, I believe in this thing, and I believe in it this way. And at the end of the day, one of us can be wrong, and that's okay. We can take a swing and a miss. But it's like, I think more actors need to be willing to get into that prickly world, because it makes us all so much stronger. Like, and this is something that changed for me as a coach. When I was younger, I definitely had more ego wrapped up in coaching, and I would love to say that I have no ego wrapped up in coaching now, but I don't know. Talk to my therapist about it. But I didn't like being disagreed with, because I felt like it was an attack. And I have learned more and more that it's not the agree with Doug hour. It's about finding the take that's the truest for the actor. And I'm curious, did you always have that ability to to compromise and to not have your ego involved, and to be able to get into a dialogue with an actor and be like, this is what I think, but are you willing to be disagreed with? And if so, is that something that you've always had, or did you have to learn that?
No, I think I've always had it.
That's nice.
I think I've just, yeah.
I wish I had that when I was younger.
It's just I don't have a filter or something, maybe.
That's
I don't
great.
know. But yeah, I'm not always right.
Right.
I know that.
You're probably right most of the time.
I don't know. Not really. I mean, I think I can provide really great feedback, and I think I see a lot of things that actors don't even think about, honestly, based on the education that I've had.
For sure.
So I'm hoping that they'll trust me. 9 times out of 10, yeah, okay, they'll probably like, yeah, you're right. Actually, I could have done better. Or you're right. I wasn't on my game that day.
Right.
But sometimes I'm wrong, and sometimes I'll call and I'll say, what are these choices? And they'll say, oh, well, I read the whole script. And I'm like, great.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't have time to.
Yeah, of
so I
course not.
trust you.
Yeah.
And you know, whether or not they get the job, it's fine. But I've never had an issue telling a client that I did not like the work.
That's great.
I kind of like when I get to do that
Yeah.
sometimes, because then I feel like I'm really doing my job. But sometimes the actors are just coaching, and I trust the coach, and I find that I'm lucky to be working with really talented people.
Yeah.
So I want to get to a place where I can trust the actors and I don't have to have those conversations.
Right.
And that we are on the same page always in the choices that they make with
Yeah.
their work.
That's great. I got a few questions from the internet. Do you mind if I pull them up and
Pull up the internet?
Pull up the internet, because I find there's a lot of kind of universality behind what actors want to know from agents, and I'm sure you've gotten some of these before. So we're just going to bore you now. So we talked a little bit about what you look like, or what you look for with client submissions,
Mm-hmm.
like training, willingness to train, taking it seriously, all of that stuff. So I think we kind of answered that one already. What do you find separates the actors on your roster that book leads and recurrings from folks who are in the land of like actor roles, just kind of the smaller stuff? Is there a difference, or is it just a matter of experience, a matter of...
That's a great question. I think a lot of it is experience, time that you've put in. I find that my developing clients are usually younger,
Yep.
more so than my established clients that may be slightly older. So yeah, there is that factor. I think it's experience mainly. But you never know. You could be a brand new actor and book a lead on your first audition.
Yeah.
And, never had acted a day in your life. So there are those one-offs.
Yeah.
But it's also trying to keep that momentum, because once you get that lead, well, now you're going to probably be seen for a bunch of other leads. So now you have to convince a whole bunch of other network executives and people in suits that you can also be on their show as a lead. And keeping that momentum, I think, is tougher for
Yeah.
someone that goes right away into a lead role, rather than kind of building your career from the ground up.
Yeah.
And paying your dues with casting directors and slowly working towards those larger parts. But I'd say overall, I think it's just, time and experience.
Right.
For the most part.
Yeah. I think, like, to echo that, I think the thing that I notice with actors that I work with, like, it's weird because there is like a bit of an arrival point of like, oh yeah, no, you're like there now. And for years and years and years, like very bookable actors. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, the way that we're training you is different because we're getting you ready to be a lead. And it's like, from there, it's not, can you do it? It's, why are you not doing it?
Yeah.
Like you have the tools, why are you not engaging them? And I find that the actors, when they arrive at the place where they're like, I accept and understand that I have all these skills, and I'm going to put them into play, and I'm going to do it with confidence because I know who I am.
Yeah.
Whenever I find that actors truly arrive at that, that's when I think starts going right for them.
It's such a good place.
It's so good.
It's so good.
I know.
I love watching it. And I can tell too. I can tell when an actor gets to that point, and I'm like, okay, the momentum is going to start happening.
Yeah.
Things are going to start, and it might not happen that year, but it will happen. If the actor is consistent and willing to ride that, keep going.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
Yeah, I always find that like endurance is such an unacknowledged and incredibly important, quality for an actor.
Yes. You can't give up.
Yeah.
You just can't.
No, you absolutely can't. Yeah. And it's like it's a law of diminishing averages too. It's like the longer you do it, like Harrison Ford was a phenomenal example of this. Like, didn't book for 10 years, was a carpenter, and then like one day George Lucas was doing American Graffiti, and he was like, well, Harrison's still here.
Yeah.
And then and he was literally a reader for Star Wars.
That's amazing.
And then they were like, oh, this guy's pretty good. And then they got him on camera and it worked.
See?
Like, it's wild.
He was there. He showed up.
And for a decade of just like not working. Let's see what else the internet has for us here. Do you have any pet peeves / things actors do from an agent POV that are pet peeves for you? You don't have to answer this if you don't want to talk any actors. You're just gonna like look down the barrel of the camera, name names, and be like, stop it.
No, I don't. I'm lucky. I'm lucky with the people that I work with.
You
to
have a
be
great
honest,
roster.
I I'm very, very thankful. Pet peeves, no, I think one thing I'll say generally though about actors when I'm vetting actors for the first time are little habits. Whether it's shifting your weight or blinking too much.
Yep.
Or weird mouth forms that people do when they talk because they're crutches, acting crutches. Those are my pet peeves.
Yep.
And I can tell
Yep.
from a tape when an actor is using a crutch.
Yep.
So that's what I would say is those little tics, they gotta go.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny because I've caught some on the internet about the blinking thing because I give that note.
Oh.
And like Michael Caine very famously did like this thing where it was like never blink, and it's like he's not wrong. And here's the thing: it's like you're auditioning for a medium where your face is the size of a house. It's like when you blink, it's like the windows are folding in half. It's a big deal, and it's like it's funny because I've cut so much. And I'm like, I don't know. Watch Michael Fassbender. Is that guy blinking in a close-up? No. Watch Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman hasn't blinked in 3 decades.
Oh yeah.
Like
it's something you wouldn't notice unless you're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you go back, look at the movies, see how many times they're blinking in a movie.
Yeah. I know. It's a whole thing. That's really great. And like also, there's a really phenomenal story. Spielberg went in and guest directed an episode of ER when Clooney was new.
Oh, amazing.
And he was like, in the middle of a take, he was just like, George, if you would just stop moving your head every time you talked, you might be a movie star. And then lo and behold, Clooney stopped moving his head every time he talked, and he became a movie star.
You knew it.
Yeah, it's like these things matter.
They matter.
Like you can be the best actor in the world, and you can do a couple of things that just like the casting will never know why they don't like you at that minutia. They probably won't know objectively why they're picking somebody else over you, but they'll just know that it's not right.
Oh yeah.
And you want to like mitigate those things as much as you possibly can. So I look forward to you telling me I'm moving my head too much in my next tape. Okay, what things do you do to get an actor seen by casting that doesn't when casting doesn't know them well? Are there any things that like do you call, do you push, do you?
I always push. So
Cool,
I'll
cool,
send
cool,
a headshot, resume, a reel or some classwork of some type.
Yeah.
Send a quick email. If they don't bite on that, then I usually take the liberty to just self-tape them.
Yeah.
Without the casting director saying yes or no.
Yes.
And then I will review the tape. And if the tape is strong enough, I will send.
Great.
Because 9 times out of 10, casting will watch an unsolicited tape
Yep.
if you are advocating for them and believe wholeheartedly that they are right for the job.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the beauty of the
100%.
relationship, right? That
That's
you
why
have with
self-tapes are
casting.
also great too,
Yeah.
because I have the access to do that. Before, self-tapes were just used as, I can't make it into the audition room, so I will self-tape in replacement of that.
Yeah.
Now we use self-tapes as ways to get seen.
That's so great. And it's so wonderful that you do that. And I should also say like in projects that I've produced, I've had you do that. And I've also had you follow up for feedback, which I thought was really, really wonderful. You're the only agent when I was casting Nose to Tail that did. And then, of course, I'm an acting coach. So I was like, a comprehensive breakdown as to what I think worked and what didn't. And then we had a brief conversation about how you thought I should go into casting. But it's like...
There's still time.
Yeah, exactly, right? I got a whole lot of life. I'm just entering act 2 of life. So this is great, This is one from Instagram. How often do actors actually need to get new headshots?
Oh, good question. I think if you're young and you're physically changing a lot every year to 2 years, if you're very young. But I think if you're in your 20s, 30s, every 2 to 3 years, maybe.
Cool.
I think if you're changing your look, 100%, if you cut your hair off, if you dye your hair, you 100% need to get them updated immediately.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a placement. I mean, this is what I believe. Not every agent's going to feel this way. But yeah, if you shave your head, send me a shot of what you look like with a shaved head now.
Yeah.
Just so I can have it in place of your other shots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think headshots are extremely important. Extremely important. More important than I think people understand. Because it really is the window to who you are and what you look like. And it is the first impression casting gets of you.
Right.
Before they even read you, before they even read your resume.
Yeah.
It's a photo.
Yeah.
So that photo's got to be a perfect depiction of who you are.
It's a really, really great answer. And I want to segue, and then I think probably I have one more question after this, and we'll bring this thing into land because you have important agenting to do. So when it comes to aesthetic in self-tapes, so this is a place as a coach where it's increasingly become a bit of a minefield to even talk about aesthetics. So we're just gonna dip our toe into the shallow end of this conversation. But I'm curious, do you think that, or do you notice that tapes where they're well lit, there's like clear hair, makeup, wardrobe choices made that fit the show, where there's a backdrop that's a solid color, do you think that those are taken more seriously?
It all matters.
Yeah.
You have to put your best foot forward. It has to be your best ability to take what's on the page and make it a reality.
Yeah.
You don't need a ton of props, but it just needs to be in a world where we believe you are in that world. We need to be able to see it, even if we're not actually looking at it.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Increasingly, I find one of the things that's changed in the way that I coach for the new world of self-tapes is our job has become more, rather than proving that we're good at acting, it's like, make them, when they watch it, be like, my show. That's it.
Yeah.
And then why wouldn't they hire you?
Exactly.
If you can give them that feel. It's not about being in costume, but it's about understanding genre. It's about understanding rhythms. It's about understanding your role within that show archetypally, all those things, and then representing something visually that makes them think, oh, you look like you should be on TV. And I know that that's like, I think the internet would love to just be able to roll out of bed and do anything, like whether it's astroscience or performance, but it's just like, I don't think it's a reality. And so, cool. I appreciate you being willing to answer that question.
Yeah, it's a simple answer.
I know. That's really
but something
great.
a lot of people don't think about because they're
Yes.
thinking about all these other things, which I get.
Yeah. It's hard enough to like act good, right? But these things really matter.
They really do.
Yeah, whether we want them to or not.
And also they stand out amongst thousands of tapes.
Yes.
And that's what you want to do, is stand out. So
Yeah.
take every opportunity you can to do so.
I have a question that I tend to ask everybody at the end of every pod, and that is, if you could go back to like starting out Julia, what piece of advice would you give, if anything? Like whether that's 13-year-old you or 18-year-old
Oh, it'll be
you,
13-year-old me.
All right, let's go.
I would give myself the advice to learn about what happens on the other side of the camera. Learn about the business. I didn't know anything about the business. When my agent said to me, hey, do you want to do on-camera work? I was like, on-camera work? What's that? I didn't know what that was.
Right.
So
Right.
I was very green. And I think if I had learned a little bit about what agents do and how the industry was built, I've read books over my years, like Who is Michael Ovitz, the founder of CAA.
Did you read Powerhouse?
I read Powerhouse.
Man,
so
that book slaps.
yeah, these are books that I probably should have read, probably too young at the time of 13, but in my early teens I should have read them.
Yeah.
Because I may have made the jump sooner from acting. And I also just think to be an educated actor, also, to know what happens on this side of the thing, know what your agent does, to know understanding what negotiations are, and to understand rates and your rights, and know the ACTRA IPA. That's something that everyone should know. If you want to be an ACTRA member, learn the IPA, know what your rights are, know what you should be getting and what you shouldn't be getting. And I think if I could tell myself that advice,
Yeah.
my life probably would have gone the same, but maybe it would have kind of come together a little quicker.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That makes a lot of sense. It feels like it would have expedited the value system that you have that brought you towards agenting in the first place.
Yeah, to get to understand the business.
Yeah.
It's a very complicated business.
It is. Yeah. It's like, yeah, getting thrown into the deep end of producing was eye-opening for
Next
me.
time we'll talk about producing.
I would love to. Yeah, because you produce as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Dabbling my foot.
Yeah, I would love that. And we can also just get a cup of coffee and chat.
We can also do that too.
And I would also, just for the American folks, the SAG operating agreement as well, like same. But,
yes, same. SAG, ACTRA.
Yeah, learn that.
Learn what your union is doing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very grateful that you took the time. You're very busy, and I think that I really do think that the industry is better that you're in it. And,
Thank you.
And
that's so kind of you to say.
Yeah, it's true. I believe it.
Oh, well, thank you, because you make the industry a better place too. Honestly, the work that you do with actors is incredible.
Thank you so much.
So I appreciate you, and also the therapy you give them.
Sometimes everybody needs a little therapy. It's therapy adjacent sometimes, for sure. Yeah, cool. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I think we got it. Yeah, we good? All right, that is it. If you're still here at the end of this thing, thank you so much. You are the real ones. And as the real ones, I have the humblest of requests for you. We're trying to get this podcast out into the world. I'm trying to get everybody to be listening to it. The goal of the podcast is to make it be a lighthouse in the darkness for actors who may be feeling lost, to have them come towards us, that we may raise the tide of abundance for everyone and get people booking. A 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts really, really helps. Rating the show, clicking like on the YouTube if that's where you're here. Follow us on social media at Nyback Act on Instagram and TikTok, on our YouTube channel. Follow me, reach out if you have questions. Let us know if you liked it. Comment in so many ways. We're still brand new. So thank you so much for being here, being the real ones. Oh, you can go to the Patreon if you want. If you want to really support us, you can go to the Patreon. All of my online acting courses are there, as well as I film coachings with my elite clients. We put them up there, we edit them, put them up there. Bloopers, exclusive blogs, all sorts of stuff over there. So if that interests you as well, so head on over there. Help yourself out. Appreciate you very much. Thank you so much for being here, and go be people.